No animal in North America inspires such awe and perhaps such fear as the grizzly bear. Grizzlies rule supreme in their domain, and their behavior can be totally unpredictable. Hi, folks. I'm Wade Bourne, and welcome to Smith & Wesson USA. If you like excitement, you'll love today's show as Tom Kelly stalks North America's most dangerous game. It'll make the hair stand up on the back of your neck.
This is the Alaskan wilderness, and it's where my story begins. My name's Tom Kelly. I work for Smith & Wesson. Actually, I'm the marketing director of the Smith & Wesson Performance Center, a position that's as close to the ideal job as anybody can ever get, given my personal passions. I'm a handgun hunter. I'm also a handgun shooter, which is not the same thing, but definitely complements the affliction. Now, the result of this combination job and passion is a continuous need for new and innovative material and adventures. One day I get a call from my boss, Tom Taylor, the VP of Marketing at Smith & Wesson. He asked me a question that only a couple of years ago would have been ludicrous. He said, "Do you want to go on a handgun hunt for grizzly?" There are now revolvers capable of shooting the types of calibers suitable for the largest game, namely the Smith & Wesson 500 Magnum and the 460 XVR. Before the introduction of these calibers, the only really suitable guns were rifles. We've now got the enormous flexibility to hunt anything from whitetails and hogs up to and including Cape buffalo and elephant with one gun. The load selection is spectacular. There aren't any other single caliber guns of any configuration with that much flexibility, so my immediate answer was yes. My answer started a journey and an adventure of a lifetime.
The Smith & Wesson Model 500 is the world's most powerful revolver. With heavy loads, it packs enough wallop to hunt such dangerous game as Cape buffalo, big cats, and, as Tom Kelly hopes, grizzly bears. We'll be right back with more action from Alaska after this break.
My wife Ellie and I and our cameraman Jake Ney arrived in Anchorage to begin the adventure. The next day Jim called and said he'd pick us up at 11 a.m., give or take a couple of hours. He was monitoring the wind and weather conditions for our bush plane flight. Jim's also the pilot. Conditions were variable, to say the least, in the Talkeetna Mountains where we were headed. I heard Jim say safety first for the first of many times this trip. Around 2 o'clock, Jim came to get us, and we made a quick trip to Lake Hood and the world-famous float plane airport. We had a short window in the weather to make our flight. The flight was about an hour over some spectacular scenery and through a mountain pass. I felt we could touch that mountain as we flew over it. We arrived at Stephan Lake Lodge and were greeted by Jim's excellent staff. We would spend the next 2 days there waiting for suitable flying weather before flying the second leg of our trip to an outlying cabin for our hunt. I know what you're thinking. What a waste of 2 hunting days, but don't you believe it. Spent the time shooting my Smith & Wesson Performance Center 500 caliber hunting handgun and Jake's 4-inch 500 caliber backup gun. The entire staff enjoyed shooting it as well. I always bring extra ammo just for such occasions. We also spent hours fishing Stephan Lake. What a trout mecca. Don't ever come to Alaska without a fishing license, though. We caught trophy rainbow trout, lots of nice lake trout, and some Arctic grayling. The grayling were a first for all of us. We also spent time in one of the most beautiful places on God's green earth. We saw sheep through the spotting scope on the mountainside across the lake. My wife spent some enjoyable moments feeding gray jays from her hand. Then we also had the chance to get to know Jim's fine staff. What a great group of people. 2 days passed and the weather cleared at our destination, so we loaded our gear into the float plane and headed off for the adventure of a lifetime. We landed at a small lake in an absolutely pristine setting. We were at the foot of the mountains, and Jim slid the float plane up to the dock in front of a neat little one-room log cabin. This is where my wife and Jake and I would stay. Jim and his assistant guide, Don Fernandez, would stay in 2 other little cabins within a short walk from ours. We set up housekeeping, and Don made some lunch. The next day, we rose early and had some cowboy coffee, along with some wonderful Cuban egg dish that Don made up. We packed our lunches, and I said goodbye to the wife, and we were off on our grizzly hunt. I sort of felt bad leaving Ellie in the cabin by herself, but I knew she'd enjoy the solitude. She's a registered nurse, which brings its own set of stresses with it. Now, Jim Bailey is a walking encyclopedia of the outdoors. I've been hunting and fishing since I could walk, but Jim taught me a lot about Alaska and bears, especially on this hunt. We hunted hard for several days. We covered a lot of ground and saw a lot of bears. We saw over 30 bears on this trip. Many were sows with cubs. In each case, the sows had 3 cubs, with one exception that had just 2. We just couldn't find that mature monster bear I was looking for. We saw a number of 7 and a couple of 8-foot bears, but we were looking for something bigger than that. Talk about a challenge. Try getting an adult grizzly sow with cubs on film. Good luck. On day 7, we headed out as usual. As we approached a spot Jim and Don called the Bear Watch, we encountered a young boar crossing the dry stream bed we were walking in. He looked at us with disinterest and continued on his way. A good start. He was to be one of 5 bears we would encounter on that day. We reached a spot that looked promising and began to glass. After a while, we spotted a sow with 3 cubs. This provided a great deal of entertainment as the cubs played and frolicked while Mom walked along. It was entertaining until they started walking toward us. When they approached to within 25 yards and hadn't spotted us as yet, Jim said, "This is close enough." Before we could stand to ward her off, Jake snapped a still picture and the flash got her attention right away. She stood on her hind legs and looked directly at us, woofed once, and the whole clan disappeared into the brush. A couple hours later, we spotted a decent bear around 225 yards away. We were watching the spot where the bear had gone out of sight, trying to decide if there was an opportunity for a stalk.
A large boar grizzly can weigh over 1,000 pounds, but it's extremely fast for its size. On a dead charge, a grizzly can run as fast as a horse. Stay with us. More coming up after these messages.
At this point, Jake and Jim both clamped their hand onto my shoulders. They said, "Big bear behind us," in whispered but urgent tones. I can't think of anything in the outdoors that can trigger an adrenaline dump more efficiently than a declaration like that. I slowly turned just in time to see a huge, dark brown rump waddle into the brush about 150 yards away. The wind was a perfect crosswind away from the bear. Don, who was watching the bear just a few feet away from me, could see that the monster was headed in a direction that had put him in a clearing across a little stream from us. We scrambled to change our positions and get the TV camera behind me. We got into position and prayed the bear would not change direction. I checked the distance to the clearing with my rangefinder. It was 57 yards. It looked much closer to me. I began to question the sanity of what I was about to do. Shoot a big grizzly with a little handgun? At least it sure felt little at that point. We waited about 3 days, which was really about 3 minutes, and I got my first look at that awesome creature. He lumbered slowly into the clearing, and he raised his ear to test the wind. Then he turned slowly to his right and began to walk across the little opening into the bush. It was now or never. I took aim with shaking hands and put the red dot on the point of his shoulder. I can remember re-gripping the gun tighter to try and steady my hands. Then, almost as if by accident, the gun went off. What happened next we'd all hoped for, but no one expected. The huge bear dropped in his tracks, kicked once, and was still. Jim said, "Watch him, that doesn't happen, no matter what you shoot him with." Don disagreed. He was looking at the bear through his binoculars, and he said, "He is dead." I must say, at this point, I did not believe it. I sat there with that aim-point red dot trained on the bear's prostrate body and was afraid to look away. After a couple of minutes staring in disbelief, I finally allowed myself to breathe and fell backward and just laid there speechless.
Isn't that worth waiting for? Wow. 9:35.
We finally crossed that little stream to where the bear lay, and I was still utterly speechless at the sight before me. The bear was indeed dead. The .440 grain carbine bullet that entered the point of the shoulder had exited high on the neck. Along its path, it broke the shoulder blade and the spine. What great performance from the gun and the bullet.
Oh, wow, he's been around a while. That's the one, buddy, that's the one. He's a good 8-foot fuss. Ooh. He's well over 8, easy.
He's well over 8. Look, he's been fighting. He has,
wow.
He has,
oh,
look
man.
at that. He's got 8.
Oh, that's an old bear. That is an old bear.
Look at that.
It was obvious the bear had been fighting. He had a gash on the top of his head all the way to the skull. He also had a freshly broken canine tooth and an exposed root. He must have been one cranky bear.
That's so perfect. That is the one to get. That is the one to get. So perfect.
Right there.
Oh, Chihuahua, I'm more happy than you. Thanks for the Smith & Wesson big gun. It only took one shot.
While we were taking our hero shots and slapping each other on the back, we met our bear's antagonist. Another bear crossed just upstream from our location, about 50 yards. Could this be true? Another behemoth in the same location? No wonder they were fighting. This bear was just as big, but appeared to be younger. His coat was also very rubbed, and he had gashes on his front legs. When he was downwind of us, he smelled the dead bear and came quickly to investigate. Before he crossed the stream to give the dead bear another fight, we stood up from our kneeling position. He stopped with his front feet in the water. He was a scant 20 yards away, trying to figure out why this bear looked so different. He paced back and forth for a few moments and then decided to leave. Thank goodness. Jim and Don skinned the bear and removed the skull, and we trekked back to camp to show my wife.
Grizzly bears are found sporadically in the mountains of Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and Washington, and they're more prevalent in western Canada and Alaska. A male grizzly bear's range may span over 1,000 square miles. The exciting conclusion of Tom Kelly's bear hunt is coming up after these messages.
My wife Ellie, Jake, and I continue to enjoy the world-class fishing for the next couple of days after a canoe trip in Portage back to the main lodge with Don Fernandez. The bear measured 9 feet 2 inches. Very respectable for an inland grizzly.
A field gauge of the size of the bear, when you see a print someplace, not the bear of course, is measured from here to here, the width of the front paw, and add an inch. Whatever this is, that'll be about the size of the bear. Like this is probably 7.5, and probably the bear is about 8.5. Now that's not the gospel, but it's a pretty good one to go by.
Yeah.
Jim Bailey sent the skull to an official measurer in Anchorage, and I've since received the official results. The skull measured 26 and 12/16 inches. This places it well into the record book.
Most people don't realize the features that these interior grizzlies have. They have this ridge here on their nose.
Oh yeah, you were telling us about that.
Yeah, they have a very specific dimple right here.
Mm-hmm.
And they also have these dimples here on each side of their nostrils, right here. Looks like somebody just took and pinched them right there.
Mm-hmm.
You take and open them up, and that bottom lip, he's got that ridge across here.
Yeah.
And as you see, he's an old boy. He's missing a tooth here, broke off, and he's an old boy. This bear here
He's been around a while.
he's been around quite a while.
He's been fighting recently too. He's got a
Got
nasty
a nice gash on top of his head and
Scars all over
chewed
his
up.
side here.
Beautiful.
Beautiful head on him.
Typical grizzly humps.
This bear is probably about 16, 18 years old, most likely, because I can
Yeah.
tell by the claws and the teeth and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jim, it's been a long, tough week. We saw a lot of bears, just couldn't get in the right position.
Excellent, man. I'm telling you, this is a nice bear. I'm speechless myself. I've seen a lot of bears. I've been doing this a long time.
This is the most spectacular animal I've ever shot.
Well,
Thank you very much.
yep. Thanks again, everybody. Appreciate it. Glad you're a good shot.
You guys have done just a fantastic job all week. You and Don and the crew at the lodge, and we appreciate it very much. My wife and I and Jake, the cameraman, just treated us like family.
Well, this is what it's all about.
If you ever get the chance, you should really experience a hunt in the great unspoiled wilderness of Alaska. I promise you, you'll never forget it.
Hunting a grizzly bear is a personal and in some ways almost reverent experience. It's a test of both nerves and skill, and Tom Kelly stood that test in that Alaskan river. In the process, he made memories that'll never go away. And that's today's show. I'm Wade Bourne. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join us again, sometime and place, right here for more Smith & Wesson USA.